I have 2 golden retrievers and 1 found a squeaky toy. So,
All right.
if you hear any noise in the background, it's just my noisy golden retrievers. So, well, you know, tonight we're just kind of carrying on the conversation that we all have been experiencing over the last 2 to 3 months. This whole environment of change. And I don't think any of us here tonight haven't been hit by something that has caused us to experience a change in our life, a change in our schedule, a change in our families, a change in our personal life. So I just wanted to have a conversation with you all tonight and maybe open up the dialogue so that way we can maybe understand it. Because I think the hardest thing that we go through in life is having things happen to us, feeling kind of like a punching bag. We have so many responsibilities as dentists and as wives, as spouses, as friends, as parents. And so it can oftentimes feel like things are just constantly happening at us. And one of the challenges in my own life, because I have experienced a lot of change, 51 years of change, is to realize that maybe there's a way through it. And so that's what we're going to expand on, is understanding the process, which is going to define it for us and give us a way so that way we can trudge through this thing that most of us don't like. Because if I asked you, if I could see everybody, I would love it if I could see everybody, but right now in the world of Zoom, we aren't able to do that, at least for tonight, is to ask you a question. And that question is, how many of you like change? And I would be curious to see how many hands go up. I have a really good friend, an excellent dentist, a phenomenal presenter, lecturer, facilitator, and he would be the first one in the room to raise his hand. He loves change because he sees it as a challenge. But the majority of people in the room are probably more like this. We approach change, or change happens, and it's like, man, I just don't like change. So if any of you feel like that, you're in good company. And the reality is, we don't have to just stay in this zone. What I have come to realize is that change is really a situational thing. It's a decision. If you look in the dictionary, it talks about how change is really an act. And, we do this all day long. We can change the color of our hair. We can change our haircut. We can change what we're going to cook for dinner because we've decided we didn't feel like cooking what we were originally planning. We can change the hours of our practice, the types of procedures we do. People in the office, especially right now, some of you may be experiencing change with your employees related to either them not coming back or making changes in your team moving forward. We can make changes. We can sit in a lecture. We can sit down at the Pankey Institute in an essential class, and we can say, I'm going to start doing X on Monday. I'm going to change this process. And then when Monday comes, we realize that, okay, that change requires a lot more. It's a decision, but there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. And that's what I want us to go through, and what I want to help maybe give some light to, because it definitely has given me an advantage of understanding this process better. Change can create anxiety. I don't know if any of you felt that when I asked you that question in the beginning. How many of you like change? It's like this. But change can create anxiety. And did you know that the most contagious human emotion is anxiety? So imagine, or you may already experience it, all the changes that you've experienced with the last 2 months related to the coronavirus, the changes in PPE, the changes in safety. And as you sit at the table with your team, if one person in that team feels anxious, it's contagion. It can run rampant. And if we can identify it, and if we can talk about it, I do believe that we can give some hope to the antidote. And the antidote to anxiety is understanding that change isn't really the hard part. It's the transition of the change. So we're going to go through the 3 parts of transition and realize that, you know, I no longer say, I don't like change. I oftentimes say, I don't like, or I don't enjoy what I have to go through in order to institute the change I've decided to make. Because it's that transition that I find is the most hard. But as I put light on it, I give it words, I make sense of it, trudging through it gets easier and easier the older I get. Doesn't get less, because I'll tell you, with my 51 years, I've had lots of transitions. I've been going through a lot in the last year. Turned 50, children leaving the house, selling a house, going off to college, selling a practice, considering buying a practice. All those things are changes, but they all require me to go through a transition with those changes. So if we can understand that it's the transition that's important, because otherwise we're pretty much just rearranging the furniture. I mean, have you ever told yourself that you're going to do X, you're going to make this change, and then all of a sudden you just kind of step over the fact that you even said it? You know, it's kind of like the team that when you come back after an event or a learning situation where you're like, okay, we're going to start doing this, and they always say, just give them 2 weeks, they'll forget about it, because they'll lose steam, they'll lose that energy to, you know, move forward with the change. Well, we don't have to give up on the changes that we need and that we want. And we can realize that we can do more than just rearrange the furniture. So there are 2 kinds of transition. And I'm going to ask my good friend, Miss Deanne, that when I get close to about 7:25, 7:30 to give me kind of a heads up, because what I want to do is also simulate an exercise that hopefully you can do with your team, because I have found it to be helpful with teams. I've found it to be helpful with myself as well. So there are 2 types of transitions. There are decisions that we make, you know, decisions that we make which propel us into a transition. So for example, I'm going to sell my house. That's a decision that ends where I live. That is something that I decide. I'm going to sell my practice. That's something that I decide. But I don't just wake up one day, sell the practice, there's a squeaky toy, and then move on. I have to develop the process of going through that. Then there are transitions that happen to us that are completely out of our control. And that is, for example, the coronavirus. Nobody asked this on anyone. Nobody asked to be unexpectedly shut down, unexpectedly put into a less than safe health situation. But it happened, and it put us all into an immediate state of change and a transition zone. So the transitions that help you get through change and help you implement it are 3 parts. You have an ending. So oftentimes you're letting something go, or you're making a decision about what's going to end that you're going to move to. The second part is moving into a neutral zone. And that neutral zone is oftentimes the emotional zone. And that hopefully opens up the new beginning, whatever it is that you really hope to get to on the other side. So those are the 3 phases of transition that we'll continue to work through. So let's break it down. Let's start with every beginning, there is an ending. So all of us that have a practice, work in a practice in some way associated with a dental practice, we all experienced an ending over the last 2 to 3 months. We were closed. We were deemed non-essential, and we had to function differently. Again, I wish I could see everybody and see how many of you could raise your hand and say, yeah, you woke up one day and realized that we're in a pandemic and people were making decisions around you about how you were going to move forward. That's an ending. How do you move through that? It's an ending because it changes our life. It's not things how we used to know it. I honestly, when I was experiencing this during the first part of the week, I had been traveling. I went on a spring break with my son and my husband. It was March 8th. We flew. I tell you, the plane was never so fresh smelling and clean smelling. I knew something was going on in the world. I just didn't know to what degree. I worked all week. I was actually helping a friend of mine in Gainesville, so I drove through Atlanta on Thursday, and there was nobody on the road. And I'm thinking, something's not right. And then I realized Friday, when everything's on the news, my daughter's not supposed to go back to college. I go to the grocery store, and oh my gosh, it's real. There's no toilet paper. So life as I knew it, the luxury that I'm used to being able to go to the store, go to any store, go where I want to, get what I need, that changed for all of us. Our practices. I know in the beginning of COVID, a lot of us were talking about, well, what does the future look like? Some of us have super busy practices where our waiting rooms are full of people. We're talking about social distancing. We're talking about putting space. What if I don't have the space for that? How do I maneuver the number of patients through my practice in order for me to meet the goals and to provide for my patients as I had planned? What does that look like? Will I be able to go back to the life that I was used to? And what's this social distancing? How do we function moving forward with taking care of our patients if we have to be at a certain distance? We are in one of the most intimate fields out there in any profession. I think hairdressers are probably as close as we are, and it's a new ball game. So that's part of the ending of what's our normal. And I don't know about you, but there were many times, not only during the crisis, the pandemic going on, but there are times when I had made a decision about implementing a procedure or making a change in my office, or maybe sharing something that was really difficult with my team to help them understand where I was. And sometimes I just wanted to put my head on the steering wheel and I didn't want to let go. It's when your heart rate beats fast, your blood pressure is rising, you're trying to figure out how do I get through this? But moving from that ending and learning about transitions, I've learned that it requires letting go. Letting go to let something in. So it's creating that space so that way you can move the new in to make that change, solidified. If you notice the picture with the balloons, that was at my church during Easter time, and we had put little cards on the end of those balloon strings of things that we wanted to let go. And we hooked those on there, and at the end of the service, we let the balloons go in the air. And that was a cathartic kind of a true, tangible event to experience that letting go. And that's something that we'll do in the exercise. There's a couple of little ideas that I can share with you. But oftentimes something that we actually experience can help us move through this part of transition. And then we can look for the success that's ahead of us. Now, once we realize there's an ending, because remember we said, if we're gonna make a change, we oftentimes have to let something go. Well, there's this middle zone, and that middle zone is the neutral zone. And I often like to say it's really the Twilight Zone. Now, if none of you are old enough to know what the Twilight Zone is, Twilight Zone is one of those shows where you're kind of stuck in this world and things are weird and things happen to you and around you, and it's like you don't have a lot of control, and there's always a lesson in it. But it's in that Twilight Zone that truly, that neutral zone, that you are standing in between the decisions that you've made about making a change and going through transition to get to a new beginning. And it oftentimes involves the stages of grieving. With an ending, it could be a death of a practice related to coronavirus is kind of something we've experienced. It can be a death of a pet. It can be a death of your normal. And oftentimes what that does is it sends us into the zone of grieving. And if most of us are familiar with, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, phenomenal, related to the stages of grief. She wrote a fantastic book about death and dying and observed what people went through and really gave it a face so people could understand what they were feeling and going through. Well, for the last 2 to 3 months, I'm going to be bold enough to say that you all have been going through these stages, and they're not linear. They oftentimes will start with one and maybe jump to one, and they go backwards. And just when you think you accept what's going on, you might go back into anger. And that is all okay, because we are feeling human beings that think on occasion. And there has been a new stage added to the grief, the 5 stages of grief. Now there's a 6th stage, and that stage is called meaning. And there's some fantastic YouTube videos of, the name is escaping me, but the gentleman that wrote with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the 6th stage that he introduced. And oftentimes, when we accept something, we also want to find meaning in all the things that we're going through. Like, what's the purpose of us having a pandemic? What's the purpose of me coming in to my practice thinking everything's great and my hygienist quits on me? What's the purpose in all of this? And as human beings, we oftentimes, if we can find our why, we can find our how. Viktor Frankl talked a lot about that in his book when he was, surviving concentration camps. And so I would encourage you to revisit these stages of grief, because it's not only helpful for you, but to help you identify your team members, to identify, I don't normally notice, Sarah acting angry, but something's going on. Something's, up against her right now. Maybe that could give you the opportunity to pull her aside and see if she could put some words around what's going on with her emotions. Again, remember that it's a part of the neutral zone. It's not fun. That's why I call it the Twilight Zone, because oftentimes we don't like to feel stuff like this. I'm a woman, and you say women feel all the time, and they like to do that. However, there are times like, I just want to get on with it. Like, let's get over this. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's move. But the reality is, if we can give light to it, and we can give meaning to it, and we can give words to it, it doesn't have as much power. That's the whole thing about Brene Brown's work with shame, is if we can just give it some light, oftentimes those things don't have as much power over us as they once did. So as you're sitting here, I'm hoping that you're kind of thinking about your own situation. And I think there are 2 important questions that I would want you to ask yourself. And these are 2 important questions that you can share with your team. You can even share this with your family. Sorry. But what is it time to let go of? I know for me, it's time to let go of my fear that I might get the coronavirus. But I can be safe about it. I can be smart. and I can be prepared and protect my team. I'm so sorry. And then the second question is to ask yourself, what's standing backstage? What's in the wings? What's waiting to make its interest, that new beginning? What can you make space for through all of this stuff that we've been going through and you're going through in your life? The third stage of the transition is the beginning. And that new beginning is an unfolding. Sorry. I'm really sorry. I apologize. But the unfolding, the new beginning, is what is really where the excitement comes in. It's where the creativity comes in. And it allows you to realize that you don't have to be perfect. This new beginning, this thing that you're making a change for, it's going to be a process. You know, you've already gone through the ending and the neutral zone. Well, now you're in the new beginning, and you might kind of cycle back through. But the exciting piece is that you've made space for this new beginning to come through. So for example, oftentimes we've thought, wow, you know, how am I going to go back into my practice if I can't see the same number of patients that I saw every day? Well, if my hygiene visit was 30 minutes and now I'm going to make it an hour, what can I do in that appointment that not only makes my team safe, my patient safe, and gives me time with them to be productive and efficient to help them in their comfort, in their health, in their function, and in their aesthetics. So there's an opportunity.
Excuse me, Kel, heads up.
Okay, thanks. So there's an opportunity actually in what we think is, oh my gosh, there's something that's holding me back. But the reality is, if we can look at, well, what can I gain out of this? What's on the other side of that coin? So the neutral zone. Jump to the new beginning. We got to let something go to bring something in. And the whole idea is to move through this. I don't know of any experience in any book I've ever read and any mentor that's ever shared their journey of their dentistry with me that hasn't experienced this transition process. I've never heard of anyone say to me, yep, I made X change and everything popped in place. And in a way, I'm thankful for that because I realize that I'm not alone. Because not everything is perfect, as you heard when my dogs were barking. So I want to give you, and you know, I think all this will be on our Pankey online page that you can go back and look through, and you're welcome to take screenshots of it. But again, these are things that I really just put up here to help you as well as maybe your team members. And there's an action list, because I know if you're like me, I want to know, okay, so what can I do with this information? Knowledge is one thing, but to put it in action, these are some things you can think through. So for example, using your time. If you're like me, you're like, I'm done with using my time. I've been sitting at home, I'm ready to move. Well, that's okay, but realize that your time can provide you more efficiency now in your practice maybe. You spent time thinking about how and what is really important to you, and it can help refine what you're doing. Arrange temporary structures. I think this is key. And what I mean by this is, you know, whenever you and I, whoever, we're prepping a tooth for a crown, we don't put a crown on their tooth immediately. Some of you are able to prep and mill a crown in your office. Most of us are still putting a provisional on the tooth and sending the patient home and then bringing them back. That's a temporary structure. We need temporary structures in our practice, like systems. So for example, with all the changes going on with PPE, what's required, what's not, what's new tomorrow, what was old that we thought was true, and now there's something else that's new. Allow yourself temporary systems because you're going to evolve. Allow yourself that freedom to grow, change, implement, and move through that transition. Don't do something just for the sake of it. I think that we are looked at as the expert in the office, and sometimes that's very stressful. But I really think it's important that we get our whole team to be involved. We don't know all the answers. We've never been in this territory before. There is new information. We are not the expert of coronavirus, you know, COVID-19. And we can let our team know and our patients know that we're working our hardest to discover what will be in their best interest. Take care of yourself. I think that's so important. Vitamin D outside is huge. Taking care of yourself through exercise and diet. You know, staying at home for months on end can be challenging, but it's important. Get time for yourself. Explore the other side of these changes that are happening, you know, the positives and the negatives. Find someone to talk to. I think it's really important. At the Pankey Institute, we really, really want everyone to know that we are there. You can pick up a phone and call any one of us at any time, and we would be happy, or email us. The idea is that there are times that we feel so alone and we don't know what to do sometimes, but I promise you that there is someone that wants to be there for you. Just pick up the phone or ask for help if you need it. And think of the process of transition as, you know, maybe it's a little time of a timeout. You're going to come back with an answer. You're going to give yourself a little grace. And then oftentimes when you demonstrate that, the team around you realizes that you can give them that same freedom, that they don't have to have all the answers, that they can have grace. So just remember those things. So here I'm going to ask my good friends to come in, and we're going to just go through what I would encourage as a simulated exercise in your office. So I've written some questions here, and these can be, you know, done at a team meeting. They could even be done at a morning huddle. I don't know, Deanne and Christine, if most of you, you probably do this, but you know, Dr. Rich Green really pushed into my brain that the morning huddle wasn't about what are we going to produce today, but it was a lot about, okay, what do we need to emotionally clear for the day? What do we need to leave at the table? What can we do to focus in on our patients who have set aside their time, their money, their values to be with us, and go into that day. And so these can be done in different ways, whether it's a team meeting, a morning huddle, an after work meeting. And I would just encourage you to keep the things that we do, these Post-it notes that we're gonna simulate, because it's a great reminder for your team. We can oftentimes do a meeting, have a team meeting, talk about something in a huddle, and quickly forget by the next week, the next day, even the next month that, oh yeah, we talked about that. Or, oh yeah, I wasn't excited about this, but now I understand we are, and here's why, because, you know, Sarah shared with us that she's brave and she's going to support me whenever I need her. So these are just things to kind of institute throughout your team. So what I want to do is, Deanne and Christine, is we've all got Post-it notes. And our first question is, you know, what have you guys, so we're sitting down at the table. Let's pretend we're in the practice together. And we're sitting down to begin our day or our meeting. Okay, we're back in the office. I think you both have been back in the office a couple weeks. I think both of you were slower to go back than, like, I'm in Georgia, so Georgia was quicker to go back. But what have you gone through? And what have you thought about that you need to let go of in order to let something in? And all of you that are on the webinar tonight, you know, feel free to jot down a word or a couple words. Join us with this. And that way you can actually simulate what this process is like and share it with your team. So whenever you guys are ready, feel free.
Okay, you want me to tell you what I will let go of?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to let go of my pride, because I am a recovered perfectionist, as you know, or recovering perfectionist, as you know. And, I kind of spent the first half of my career feeling like I had to have all the answers. I thought that's what my team wanted, and I thought they would, feel comfortable with that and kind of expect that. But as the years have gone by, I have found that the more grace that I give to myself, the more I tend to pass that along to everybody else. And so as we've been back at work, we are all kind of fumbling together with this new, PPE and all the different ways that we're doing things, and just allowing ourselves to kind of work together to figure it out. So it's been really nice. I think, years ago, I tended not to ask for help because I thought that I should have the answers, like I said, myself. And the second half of my career became much more enjoyable and meaningful because I asked for help more from the mentors that you're talking about, friends, mentors, but my team. And so it's really amazing talk about transitions, the transformation that it takes when you allow this to happen. So that's been really that's what I would like to let go of and continue to let go of.
Okay. Christine, thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Deanne. Mine was more on structural and systems in the office, and so mine was changing the old or getting rid of the mindset of how we're supposed to schedule, especially around our hygiene visits. And so our hygiene visits have typically been in our office where we do schedule according to what the patient's needs are. What I mean by that is the interval is set according to the time that they need, and also the time and the length of the appointment. But it's about, the spacing between and what does that allow? And I think that we've been back for 4 weeks now, and it's really allowed me to creatively think about what does that hygiene visit mean to us as providers, and what does it mean for, and what would we like that to mean for our patients, for our clients?
Yeah, so letting go of what your old system was, maybe? Is that
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say? To let it evolve into how you can meet the needs now?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you both identify, something that you can let go of, because I'll tell you the hardest thing for me, and mine's kind of similar to Deanne, like I got to know it all. Like you got to know how to react in this situation, which means you got to set those systems up. You got to get everything organized. You got to be that front man. You got to be calm. You got to not look nervous. But when you write it down, you say, okay, I can identify this, and this is something I can let go of. What do you feel?
Relief.
Relief?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome.
I feel expansive. There's much opportunity, and it allows for myself for more creativity, opens my mind to more and more ideas and creativity and choices and options, and much more of like a collaborative mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. That creates that new beginning. And is there anything within that before you, because what you're describing is that new beginning, going through that neutral zone. Is there anything that gets you caught up in those stages of grief in that neutral zone before you get to that possibility? Can you share what some of that is?
I think that fear is always there, and recognizing it, that it is scary to be moving forward into a new way, but it doesn't have to hold you there. So fear, definitely fear of the unknown, but in a lot of ways that drives me. It drives me to be to not stay in that fear, but to move me forward. Yeah, that's what I.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer too that in every situation, as you mentioned, there are silver linings if you just look hard enough. There's always silver linings and opportunities in the wake of things, things that you go through in your life. So that gives me hope all the time. So.
Right. So you wrote down the thing that you can let go of. You shared your feelings and your thoughts around that. If you could pick out of what you're letting go, what's that new beginning? Can you name it? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot there, but is there like a way to say, okay, us team, if you were like the three of us were running an office together and we were saying, okay, our new beginning is,
I have a word.
Go.
Yeah, I would say overcomer. That comes to mind. Like, we are overcomers. We overcome lots of things in our life, and so this is just one more thing that we will overcome. We'll figure it out. We're going to work it out, but we're going to work it out together. And I think anytime you go through something like that, it is extremely bonding, And I think things like this, even though it's something difficult, I think sometimes the more challenging things are, the more that people work together and figure it out, and that really bonds people together.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that, and I would say resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Resilient, and there is hopefulness. You guys had mentioned hopefulness, that the resilience and the flow, and what we decide on to start with doesn't need to be that always. It can change. It's dynamic, and together, like what Dan is saying, with teams, we can create something together that's going to be more and more better.
Yeah, I think that's key too. That both of those statements that you shared are key, because when we do decide to make a change, and if we understand that in order to make that change happen, we're going to transition through to that new beginning. Understanding that it's a process, that's not a straight line all the time, and that just like, as I said, in the neutral zone, I mean, you're going to go up and down. You're going to go forwards and backwards, sideways in whatever ways, and it's okay. The whole idea is, if you can overcome that, if you can see that as your goal, you can realize that it's worth the effort to get to that side. And as a team, pull each other along.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mitch Carson just wrote a note about having open dialogue for teamwork, and absolutely, it's about collaboration. It's about having that safety within each other to be able to move through and be resilient with one another. So thanks, Mitch.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that in a team exercise, and even as the dentist or the leader of the team, let's say, is to understand that, one of the most common sayings, so tell me if I'm wrong, is perspective is everything. Mm-hmm. What I've come to understand is that perspective is based off of experience. Mm-hmm. And for some of us, my 18-year-old daughter has 18 years of experience. So her college, not being able to go to class, having online classes, having to not go to the sorority parties, people not graduating from high school properly, from the normal way of celebrations, weddings, having babies, all these kind of events that, we kind of experience and want to experience. With age, with time, we're dealing with a team that some of them are young and they don't have a lot of experience. And we can also help guide them through with that perspective, to be that beacon of hope. And at the same time, we can ask our team to provide hope for us, because, it's hard. I don't know. Do you guys feel like it's hard sometimes when you walk in the office? You just had a fight with your husband. The kids were late to get you to school. You didn't get breakfast. You didn't get all your coffee. And then you got to walk in with the happy grin and everybody's like, okay, oh crap, today's going to be bad because look, she's in a bad mood. You know, that's tough.
And to add to your perspective note, I think that younger team members also have a different perspective, but a lot to add as well. And so they have a different viewpoint of things. Though they may not have as many experiences, everybody has a different viewpoint, and everybody's perspective counts. And that's that true teamwork collaboration that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you, Kelley, you mentioned before too that's one of the importance of the morning huddle as well, is that if there is someone on the team that is going through something like that, if you have a safe enough environment, someone can say that or tell you that, and then everybody else can lift them up that day. And so it's really, I think that's really important.
Yeah. You know, one of the biggest change that I've experienced in my life is getting married. I've been married 25 years. It'll be 26 in a couple of weeks. And, you know, you go into marriage saying everybody's, you know, it's 50-50. Everybody's got to give 50-50. The reality is it's nowhere close to that, because there are days that I'm at 10% and I need somebody to be in my 90. Or I need to be somebody else's 40, even though I feel like I'm at 35. You know, so what you're saying, Christine, is so true, that, you know, the ability to just be aware and to feel safe and to be able to understand that we're, you know, change is amongst us, but there's a way through it, you know, identifying it, letting something go, having some conversation about it, letting it be okay that you feel something and you think something, and then let that new beginning, you know, move through. So what I would encourage is, if we were all in the same space, what I would do with our little sticky note that we wrote what we wanted to let go, I would actually recommend, if you have this in your office, this is a shredder, is to shred your note. Let it go. Really let it go. Do something tangible. Yes, cut it up, burn it. Don't burn your practice or anybody else, but yeah, throw it or put it in the trash. But realize sometimes you have to do that several times. Sometimes you have to walk yourself back through that decision about what you're going to let go so you can allow the change to come in. And then what I would recommend is what you have decided is going to be your new beginning, and how, and your emotional, your cheerleader note, for the lack of a better word, is stick this on the wall. Yeah, what'd you put? What does yours say, Christine? Resilient, hopefulness, bonding time. Yeah, put this on the wall somewhere in your practice. I used to have a wall in between my operatories where my patients walked through, and we would put positive things on the wall about somebody that helped us that day. Like if somebody came and cleaned my room for me, I might say, you know, Melissa rocks, and stick that up on the wall. And it's great for your patients to see that you as a team are trying to create the unity that you like, and you are working together for their best interests. Because at the end of the day, we all get to do what we get to do because we have someone that decides to walk through our doors, trust us, sit in our chairs, allow us to sit right beside them, and provide the opportunity of hopeful health. So at the end of the day, it's really important to remember our patients. Mm-hmm. So that's the exercise. And I just want to, you know, leave you with a couple quotes that really stuck with me, and then we'll go into questions and answers. But, you know, it's really not in a person's goals, but it's in their transitions that people are great. I love Ralph Waldo Emerson. He's got some great things. And I also heard this quote from Winston Churchill, courage is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. And if you think of it like, well, failure, why not go from win to win? Well, the reality is there really is no failure. Going to sound cliche and cheesy, but there's really no failure if we are learning something. We didn't fail because we had to close our practices because COVID happened. Something happened. It created a transition. Changes occur. And if we can keep our enthusiasm up and realize that we can get through this neutral zone to this new beginning, it's your oyster. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I was going to share just a little information about, I am going to be presenting a webinar on July 17th about turning urgent care, or what a lot of people say is emergent care, into comprehensive care. Oftentimes, especially in COVID, you might have seen emergencies that weren't patients of record, or maybe you have emergencies that occur in your practices. And one of the things that I really spent a lot of time in my own practice was trying to help my patients move from needing emergent care and helping turn a situation that maybe was a single crown to help them understand that there were other things going on in their mouth and their joints and their muscles that could help move them into comprehensive care, and to also prevent them from having more problems. So please join me July 17th. It'll be a 2-hour webinar. And that's all I have here. So if we have any questions, or I don't have my questions up, so I don't know what we got.
Christine had the information about the book, and I believe she posted that. The book, Christine, that
So that's
Kelley were trying to think of. And
yeah, the sixth stage of grief, Kelley, that you're talking about, was by David Kessler.
Thank you. I wanted to say the wrong name, sorry, that's why I didn't.
And the book is Finding Meaning, the sixth stage of grief. Yeah.
Yes, and the book that I am talking about is called Transitions by William Bridges. And it's a phenomenal book. It's one of those books that you can pick up and reread in anything. When you turn 50, when your kid goes off to college, whenever you sell your practice or buy a practice, it's got a lot of great things in it. Do we have anything else?
There's any good piece of advice for final year dental students?
So I guess it's a pretty broad question. Advice on one is, well,
Be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
Lifelong learning. Mm-hmm.
You know what I might say is to realize that, dental school, I hated dental school. I hated all the, I did. I know Deanne loved dental school. I don't know about Christine.
Every moment. I know, I'm weird. I don't know.
But you know what I realized is that dental school was a great education. I learned a lot, and it got me to do some great things. And I realized that I had good training. And I also realized that I still had so much to learn. So like Deanne says, be a lifelong learner. Know that there's still more that you haven't been exposed to. And also, just in order, like in the job world, having a willing soul, having a willingness to learn from either someone that you want to be mentored by, or even just learn by the people that are around you.
I think that dental school gives you a really good basic foundation of clinical care, and there's so much more to build on that. And I would say that most of my dentistry that I do now was learned after dental school,
Yes.
including my communication skills and clinical skills, which Pankey is the foundation to how I practice. And that was all really learned after dental school. And so my advice is that you have a great running start, and with your dental degree and a huge bright future ahead, and continue to learn, like what Dan was saying, and come check out the Pankey Institute.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point because, you know, as Dr. Pankey said, and what we love to say is, you know, there was never a tooth that walked in his practice. You know, it's a human being. And we get the privilege of helping them discover their own dental riddle for the rest of their life. And so when you realize that from dental school, the patient's kind of a procedure, it's kind of a code, it's a requirement that you have to hit, to this is a human being that's putting their trust in me to do my best, and knowing that hopefully if I keep learning, I'm going to keep getting better. Is there anything else?
Kevin said you are your best investment, that is for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I love Brene Brown, and one of the things that she said in a talk that she had with a Swedish station was that, you know, she does a lot of work on shame, but shame is so self-occupying, and we aren't our best self when we're going through all those challenging things that we say to ourselves between our ears, and all the things that maybe you experienced over the last 2 to 3 months. And that's where you give yourself a break, and you give yourself that antidote, and you bring on calm, and you become your best self with time. It doesn't happen overnight. I'm still trying to become.
To the dental student too, I'd say you're in a great profession. And even through this crisis, even though we were shut down for a couple months, going back to the office was really solidifying for me that I did, you know, I'm in the right profession for myself. And that, like you said, Kelley, patients come, and I'm so appreciative that they do. And our industry, the healthcare industries, people will always need us, not just for our services, but for our, and not for our care, skill, and judgment, but, you know, for our relationships. And so I just feel very fulfilled by our profession. And so you have a bright future ahead of you.
And I love Ian's comment was, be part of your team instead of being the boss of your employees. And that is so critical. Again, I think that it just kind of comes with our training, but you know, everybody should be an equal partner in your team. And the more, you know, our rule was we do all. I mean, I took the garbage out. You know, I was the first one there in the morning helping everybody cleaning up. We all pitch in and do it. And I think you have to be an example. And but the more that you can all be on the same page, the better. Yeah, that goes a long way.